The House settlement has been finalized-ish. We debate it. We'll also talk about Marcus Zegarowski heading to Alabama as a graduate assistant, so we answer your questions. It is a mailbag show. It's the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors.
Heads up, it's the Roll Jays podcast, the voice of the Creighton basketball fan. With your hosts, Jimmy Allen, Alex Drake, and Casey Matthews. Join the crew and meet CU players, coaches, and a whole lot more. Now, the Roll Jays podcast. Here's Jimmy Allen.
Welcome into the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. I'm Jimmy Allen. That's Casey Matthews. We got a lot to get to. The House settlement has finally got a ruling. A judge has decided on a $2.8 billion payout to former athletes. Marcus Zegarowski, former Creighton great and friend of the show, is heading to Alabama to work for Nate Oates, and we'll answer your questions as we do every Monday. So if you're not following the Roll Jays podcast on Twitter, at Roll Jays podcast, get your questions in every Monday. We'll answer them right here on the show. Casey, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm doing great. Good morning. How are you?
Listen, it's been a grind. We're getting ready for CWS week, and I think the city of Omaha and probably Rob Anderson, those guys are ready for next week to get over. But some news has come down the pipe as far as the House settlement. Something that I think everybody in the college landscape has been waiting for and anticipating happening for quite a while is that the House settlement has finally reached an agreement. And it's been ruled that $2.8 billion needs to be paid out to former athletes. And it's really going to change the way that business is done across the board in college landscape. One of the things we've been talking on my radio show about is the Title IX aspect of all of it, right? It's going to be interesting to see certain schools like Ohio State has 39 sports on their campus that are directly affiliated non-club sports that are NCAA sanctioned. And when we put a cap on how much you could pay these athletes, because a part of this is also the revenue sharing aspect of $20.5 million. How do you manage that across 36 different sports? And I think in Creighton's case, it's 21, and also keep Title IX in effect.
Yeah, admittedly, I'm not a Title IX expert, so I'm sure that there'll be things that I get wrong here, but I've always thought with this that, one, I'm not a huge fan of the NIL model as it stands now. I'm for players making money, but I think, it's just too much of a Wild Wild West type of vibe for me with this. But I've always thought this is going to hurt the other student athletes that are not in revenue generating sports, and which is pretty much all of them other than football, and then in some situations basketball. So that to me is what is going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because you're like I had heard rumors, we're obviously Creighton pod, but I had talked to somebody that I feel like is pretty in the know at Nebraska, and at one point the number being thrown around for football there was 18 million of the 20.5.
18.5, by the way.
Is that okay? So there you go. So, I mean, look at that, in and of itself. I mean, that's $2 million left for a men's basketball team, women's basketball team. And let's not forget, they're pretty good at volleyball. So,
well, and I want to stop right there because it brings up an interesting point, because there's on paper only 5 schools in the country that operate in the black from an athletic department standpoint. And Nebraska is one of those schools. And if they're still giving 18% or 18 of their $20 million to one sport, imagine that's going to affect the other schools that are operating in the red for those sports as well. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop your train.
No, you're good. It's a great point. That's something I wasn't aware of. I just think that there's just no way around it. Like it's going to end up impacting the other student athletes that aren't football players, that aren't basketball players, or I really do hope that I just can't imagine that in that situation, volleyball wouldn't be taken care of in some capacity. But
sure,
the issue comes in is that you're in the Big Ten, and then we're talking, I know why we're talking Nebraska, but you're in the Big Ten. And so now you're competing against all those other Big Ten schools that maybe don't have a football program like yours or a volleyball program. So they put more money into basketball.
We talked about this with Alan Huss too, right? It's not even necessarily a Nebraska thing, but it's a Big Ten SEC thing where they're kind of the Joneses, and everybody else is trying to keep up with them because of their big TV deals because of football. Now, obviously, the Big East has the contract with Fox and FS1, and that kind of combats that. But listen, we're talking about apples to oranges here. It's not apples to apples from a dollars compensation standpoint because, listen, football drives revenue, and that's something the Big East is going to have to navigate. How do we keep up with the Joneses when we don't have the football money to compete with?
Well, I think this interesting thing there, though, is that remember that you're not going to get that much. I say that much, that big of a percentage in the Big Ten isn't going to go to basketball.
Yep.
So I think on one hand, that's what helps the Big East is that if you have an administration that's willing to really spend in basketball, now you should be at least on the equal playing, field or court as the Big Ten, as the SEC, and in some cases, if you have the money and you have the funds and can do it, or are willing, I guess, to do it, you can outspend the Big Ten and the SEC and those other basketball programs because,
in theory,
yeah. But I mean, look at just go back to the Nebraska example. If that's correct, and they spent 18.5 on football. Now they've got $2 million left, and we're just talking rev share. So, the other ways that you can make money here, there's still going to be some of those with the collectives.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how all that shakes out.
Well, that's the other interesting part of this, right? There's now a clearinghouse being put into place that if you are making NIL money over $600, the clearinghouse has to decide whether it's fair market value. And from a legality standpoint, I have no idea how that's going to stand, especially in a court of law.
No, I totally agree with that one. That one's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But the point I'm trying to make is if in this example, Nebraska has $2 million that they're going to spend on both basketballs, volleyball, whatever other sports they want to give some money to, I feel pretty strongly that Creighton will have more than that in basketball alone. So
the one outlier that I think is going to be interesting to navigate across the Big East, the A10, the non-football having schools versus the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, the Power 5, Power 4, is what does it look like if there's an opt-in system? And I think that's a legit thing that's coming. Is it's been talked about, it's been kicked around by Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, that you basically have to have a show bank account, like, hey, listen, we are vested to be here, and that's been talked about football, and there's been a discussion of split off from the NCAA, and that's all been centered around football. But if those schools are leaving for football, where does that leave them when it comes to March Madness? And that's something that's going to have to be figured out as well.
Jimmy, you should watch the latest Big East Energy Weekly show that launched 48 minutes ago. We went into that, and so I think my theory on it, could be wrong, I probably am, is that eventually you're going to have two tournaments, and you're going to have the power leagues, and you're going to have everybody else. And I hate that. I hope I'm wrong. I can't tell you how much I hope I'm wrong, but I just feel like it's inevitable.
I don't think you're far off on that, and I think the SEC's the Power Fours of the world are going to say, well, we've already got the NIT. We've already, and it's obviously not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I think is going to happen, though, is I think there's going to be a clause for football. Okay, you can secede from the NCAA for football only. Excuse me, and I'm sorry. We see that kind of in other sports. Missouri still wrestles in the Big 12. There's Notre Dame is an ACC affiliate but plays football on an independent schedule, things like that. So it's not that far-fetched of an idea because it happens in special clauses now in college athletics. But I just think that football and football money specifically has grown to such a monster that it has to be looked at differently because there's and I think that's how you get around Title IX as well. And I hate to word it like that, but how you have the rules they put in place with Title IX still being effective, because the reason Title IX was able to be effective is because the value, the dollar amount was generated by scholarships. Okay, well, if a football player is getting a scholarship for $40,000 a year, then a volleyball player needs to get the same exact amount and the same exact treatment. Well, we've got proof and tons of cash sitting in bank accounts that prove, hey, football is a completely different monster right now and needs to be treated separately. And I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I do think it has to be understood. that there's a lot of money coming in from football, and to treat it the same as you do every other sport, it's probably short-sighted and needs to be addressed.
Yeah, the one part about all of this, and the one guy whose job I do not envy, is Brian Seeley. It got announced that what eventually will be the CEO of College Sports Collective, is a 46-year-old Harvard law graduate. Harvard law graduate. There you go. Got there. That did 8 years with Major League Baseball in their investigation department. He also has worked for the Department of Justice. So a guy that's got a Harvard law degree, that has got some ties to the U.S. government, as well as regulating sports. And I know a lot of people say, well, baseball doesn't have a salary cap on it. We're talking about salary cap issues. Minor league baseball does, and that's what Brian Seeley specialized in. So we now know who the czar or the wizard at the end of the Gold Brick Road is in college athletics. And I like the fact that it's a guy that's 46 and describes himself as a college sports fan. And I know that may seem secondary, but I think that's really important, because his age, and I think this was deliberate. His age is right in that medium age where it was the way it used to be versus the way it is now, and grew up with change and has been around change in the sport and baseball to some degree, with the pitch clock and things like that being implemented into the sport, is I think really good for college athletics, because it's somebody that's used to change, somebody that's been around change, and somebody who's probably grown up seeing change and is okay with implementing change into the way college athletics is going to be done.
Yeah, I think that's really good analysis. I do like the fact that he seems to be a younger guy that might have a different perspective and isn't listen, we all need that.
Yeah.
I need to be challenged on my perspectives on things, and so to have somebody with a little fresh voice, fresh blood in there, hopefully make some changes, and just not let this thing deteriorate.
Because right now it feels like that's all that's going to happen.
Yeah, it does. And as a college sports fan, it's hard. It's hard to watch. So we'll see.
Our friend of the show, real close friend of Casey Matthews, Marcus Zegarowski, he's got himself a new gig. He's heading to Tuscaloosa to work under Nate Oates as a graduate assistant. I hope you don't mind me talking about this. We talked about this privately. I thought it'd be a great fit to get Marcus to come back to Omaha to have a similar role on Mac's staff, with the new rules with Mitch being able to move out of the graduate assistant position. Obviously, Jahins Managaz heading off to Murray State to work with Ryan Miller, and there's a couple openings there. I thought it'd be a really good fit. Listen, if you're not going to work for Greg McDermott, working under Nate Oates isn't a bad place to be either.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we're all happy for Marcus. It's a great opportunity. Marcus was recruited by Preston Murphy, and Preston is on that staff at Alabama. So they're very close. And, Marcus's father and Preston are also very close. So there's a lot of factors in play that kind of led him there. And then too, I think, I don't know if he would say this or not, on the show, but I think the whole thing, we just don't know what's going to happen here after this year.
Fair.
And not that he doesn't love Huss or wouldn't want it for Huss, but I think, there was probably something, again, I am saying probably because I don't know this for a fact, but there was probably a part of him that thought about that and thought that, hey, I don't know what Mac's going to do. He's had a great career. It could be done.
And Nate Oates isn't going anywhere unless maybe the NBA comes calling.
Right. Or the other side of that is Preston Murphy. Is Preston Murphy going to, and that's where the angle is. It's nothing against Creighton. He loves Creighton, loves Omaha. I'm sure the choice, if he had a choice to decide between the two, was hard for him to make. The other side of that, though, is Preston's, on the up and up, and could be a guy that you never know. He could get a shot to be a head coach.
Yeah, and that's something that I talked about when I interviewed Trey Ziegler last week. Is something we kind of discussed, is playing the game with inside the game, because I mean, you usually don't take that job or a job in coaching without the aspirations to get to the number one chair, right? Excuse me. And Trey kind of alluded to, hey, the reason I came here is because I saw the path and the tree of Mac and the way it's worked out for everybody else, and I kind of aligned myself with this guy or that guy and made friendships on the staff already when I was here the first time. And when Ryan Miller leaves a year ago, and you see that hey, it's still happening. guys that work for Greg McDermott are still getting big time coaching jobs, and if it happens again on the staff, I can follow somebody else. It's obviously the same exact thing in Tuscaloosa right now.
Yeah. Well, and you also have to think too, like, listen, Huss is a heck of a basketball coach, right?
Yeah.
So if he is the head coach here next year, he has a staff back at High Point that don't be shocked if a couple more come. Obviously Mike Nesbitt's coming with us. There's a graduate assistant that's already here. So excuse me. So don't be surprised if if a couple guys end up leaving Creighton staff next year if Mac's done, and Huss replaces them with High Point guys. You don't know what happened there. I think if you're Marcus, you're looking at that, you're probably thinking, okay, well, what's my move here if I want to get into coaching? And exposing yourself to a different network is smart in that regard, rather than going back to the people that you already know. So
Right.
being getting acquainted with other trees, because he'll always be a Mac guy.
Yeah,
He'll always
sure.
be a Creighton guy. So
and you can always go home, right? Like that, there's always going to be that connection.
Absolutely. And I can't. I mean, listen, I can't speak for Huss, but I know Huss well enough to know if Marcus wanted an opportunity to work for Huss, he would absolutely consider it and talk to him about it. I mean, Marcus is great people. I think he's going to be a great coach. His mom runs a really successful AAU program back in Massachusetts. His dad is big time basketball dude. Obviously, we all know his brother, but his brother Michael played in the NBA. His twin brother played in college. His sister played.
Marquette, right? Didn't his twin brother went to Marquette, right?
No. His twin brother was
UMass, right?
Gosh.
Was it UMass?
No, it wasn't that. It was Stonehill, I think.
Oh, that's right.
I have to look it up.
Yeah,
Stonehill. Right. He was a transfer as well. But they're just a basketball family, and so this was kind of inevitable. I think we all wish he was still playing.
Sure.
But injuries sort of derailed that. But yeah, I mean, listen, he's gonna kill it. And if Preston Murphy gets a chance to be a head coach in the next year or two, then Marcus will go with him, and so it'll be interesting. But whatever that dude does, he's gonna give it his all. He's gonna do it at a high level. So I'm really excited for him.
Every Monday, we open up the mailbag for you to get your questions in, and we appreciate everybody that continues even throughout the offseason to give us their questions. Our guy Peter, who is Mr. C_mathematics on Twitter, weighs in again this week asking, looking at this roster on paper, what areas, if any, draw some possible concern or make you say, if this doesn't go well, the Jays are going to struggle? Cold shooting nights, turnovers, finding the right lineup, finding the right defensive strategy, etc. #GoJays. Pete, thanks again for weighing in. And Casey, I hate to be this guy, and this isn't me putting on my Blue Jay rose colored glasses. It's really hard to find flaws in this roster right now when you have an offensive output guy like Josh Dix. You throw in the high volume that both Blake Harper and Nick Graves are coming in with, and obviously at a lower level into the Big East. And then you throw in Owen Freeman into the equation. And by the way, you still return a guy that like Isaac Trout that shoots at a high clip. You still get Jason Green, who gives you the defensive output and can give you 15 to 20 points on any given night when he's on. And we still don't know what's going on with Fedor Zugic. So
in Jackson.
And I was about to say, and I didn't even mention the Rivals 150 guy who is still on the roster returning for his second season that was thrown into the starting role after 8 games a year ago. So it's listen, we don't know what Hudson Greer is going to be either. and he could shoot the lights out of any gym. And if he can take that next step forward at the collegiate level, he's going to be really, really good and really scary good. So with that being said, I know there's been a lot of frustration amongst Jays fans over the last probably 5 to 8 years when you're living and dying by the 3 and there doesn't seem to be other options, even when you have a 7-foot center. I think this version of this Creighton team is going to make you feel better about nights like that because they do have so many options. Blake can get to the rim. Nick can get to the rim. Josh can get to the rim. You also just brought in a 7'1" freshman from Serbia, Alexa Dimitrovic. So there are so many layers to this team. This is going to be a really fun puzzle for this coaching staff to put together.
Yeah, it's going to be fun for them because there's so much talent and there's so much competition at each spot. So you're going to get pushed every day in practice, and I think that's so fun to watch because you get to see people really give it their all in practice and really find the best version of themselves. And ultimately that pays off on game nights. If I'm looking at this roster though, and I'm worried about anything, athleticism, and speed. Those are the things that for me, I just don't know. Now that's not to say they don't have it. I just don't know what it looks like. And so to me, those would be the things that I'm like, we'll see. But I think in terms of shooting, we'll be able to shoot the ball. Coaching with Mac and Huss, points are going to be scored. That's not going to be an issue. Ball screen coverages will be fun to watch. It doesn't worry me at all, but it's so intriguing to see what they do, because we've talked about this. I still think it's going to end up being a lot of what we've seen in the past, but maybe they change. Maybe they do more trapping and hedging and things of that nature. But I still think it's going to be a lot of drop coverage and just force teams to shoot those long twos. But if I could find an area to nitpick, that would be it for me. Athleticism.
That and the defensive part is so intriguing, right? It's just like you've known what this team is going to do every single night with Ryan Kalkbrenner back there. And it's not only that you don't have that unicorn in Ryan Kalkbrenner, you have two guys that are totally different. I know Leska is 7'1", but he's not 280 pounds. And Owen Freeman's never averaged above 28 points a night or 28 minutes a night. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle the 5 position and how they build the defense. Where
I'm at with the 5 position.
Well, and that brings us up to our next question, because we had a debate about this last week, and it was actually Schmitty, our guy Schmitty, actually said that he oops, wrong question. That's repeat. There we go. From Schmitty. He mistyped last week. He was actually trying to talk about Jackson moving to the 5 as opposed to Isaac Trout. And I think that's really interesting. And the one thing that I thought was really intriguing about Jackson McAndrew's development a year ago was it seemed like, whether it be offensively, defensively, every single game, there was something new added, a different wrinkle to his game added. We've seen him kind of get into the paint offensively later in the season. We've seen him develop more of a defensive four-man presence in the paint later in the year, especially when Jason Green wasn't on the floor. I think he's the guy that is the most intriguing for the second year in a row about what he can be, because he can give you 20 points a night. He's got the body type to slide down and play a small man 5. From what I saw from him last year, I think I have a little more faith in Jackson McAndrew being an option for a small ball 5 than I do Isaac Trout.
This is where we disagree, Jimmy.
Let me preface this with, in a positionless system where it's not, he doesn't have to be, he can get out and play on the perimeter, and obviously that's the case for both of those guys. But
I think here's the thing, right? When you're talking college hoops, you are who you can guard. So to me, if he's guarding 5, we're in trouble. So that to me right away says you got to have somebody that's more physical and can guard the 5 spot on the court, unless it's a situation where you're trying to steal a couple minutes, or maybe you're down late and you need some perimeter shooting. I don't see that at all. Now, to me, the question is, how much 4 does he play?
Yeah,
and because all of them are starting 5, right?
Yeah,
so like
I think it's going to be unquestionable that he could switch 3-4, and there's not going to be much of a drop off, right?
Well, right, but here's where it gets fun, and like this is part of that puzzle piece. It happens. Every team has this guy that is a huge contributor and contributes to winning, that gets kind of forgotten about. To me, that's Jason on this team, and it seemed to be last year as well. And I'm guilty of that just as much as anybody else, to be clear.
Well, I think there's a little bit to that, though. He struggled out of the gate last season. Like he came on really big at the end of the year before, and I think people thought he was going to be a main contributor. And he had some struggles at the beginning of last season because of injuries and things like that. But obviously, he got there by the end of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, I just think he contributes so much to winning and in the culture that Mac has there. My thing with Jason has always been toughness, and I think he kind of answered that bell for me last year, and that was awesome. That was awesome to see. But at the 4 spot, I think I just think that's where it gets interesting, because you kind of know what you're going to do with your 1-2. And I think that really the question becomes, do you prefer one or the other? It's going to be Blake or Austin, or do you prefer Jason, not Isaac? Or, I'm sorry, not Jackson.
Not Jackson, yeah.
Because if you prefer to have,
and the scoreboard's gonna matter.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you prefer, like if you're coach, right, and you're saying I want Austin or Blake on the court as my 3, then naturally you shift Jackson to the 4, which means Jason is your backup 4 there. Yeah. But if you think your lineup is better with Jackson at the 3 and Jason at the 4, now you're bringing Austin or Blake off the bench at the 3. The reason why that's tricky is that you can create a little bit of a logjam there, unless one of those 2 guys can also play the 4, and you can have some type of rotation.
Yeah, there's only 40 minutes.
Exactly. Which is, again, back to our Isaac Trout discussion of why I'm so adamant that he's going to play a decent amount of backup 5, because there's just not going to be minutes. So, yeah, I don't see, kind of all the way back to our guy Schmitty, I don't see Jackson playing any 5. I think if you end up going small ball 5, it's going to be with Jason. But I'm still all in on Isaac at the 5. And I think you have to be very intentional of how you have this discussion too, is that it's not a, well, yeah, but it's not a, like, it's not a Isaac's not good enough, or he's not as good as Jay. It's not that. It's that he could be such a good stretch 5 and create a lot of issues, for teams, trying to figure out how to guard with him at the 5. And I just believe that he is tough enough and physical enough to give you some minutes at the backup 5. That's why I'm so adamant about this. It's not because I just think, well, he's not good enough to play the 4. There's just not going to be enough minutes there. And he can provide value to this team. He's a really good player.
Yeah. So, it's a good problem to have.
It is.
It's really interesting to have this conversation, because over the last 4 years, it's been, we know who 1 through 6 is, and you got to find out what you have in those other guys. That's not the case with this team. It's you've got to find spots for very, very talented dudes 1 through 9, and got to find minutes for them.
And hey, and one last thing, I know you talked about Hudson. I made sure I told this person, I'll give this information off the record. So if he's watching, this is for you. All indications are Hudson is playing really well so far in workouts, and is impressing to a point where it's surprising how good he is playing. So maybe they didn't need a shooter through the portal. Is that what you're saying? I don't know. But maybe. I'm sure. I do know because it wasn't Trey. I do know Trey will watch this, and I just assumed that's who it was. Yeah, no, it wasn't Trey, but he's definitely going to text me about this. Yeah. But it's awesome to hear, because he's been telling me all summer, like, hey, don't sleep on Hudson, man. This kid can ball, and we're all in on him. So it's exciting to hear, because I do think he's another one. You had all these transfers, like, oh yeah, we also got this big time freshman. Yep. You never know. Like, Jackson played a lot of minutes as a freshman. Back a couple years ago, we had the trio come in here with Art and Nemhard and Trey. They were great freshmen. It's like, you never know, man. You never know. We could be sitting here in a couple of months like, wow, how do we find a way to get these transfers on the floor? Because Hudson Greer is just shooting too well. Yeah. So anyway, good problems to have. That is the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing, Pyramid Contractors. I'm Jimmy Allen. That's Casey Matthews. We appreciate everybody getting your mailbag questions in. Again, we're going to drop that every Monday, and we will try to drop this episode on Tuesdays. But we appreciate you for watching. Don't forget to follow Big East Energy on social media, as well as like and subscribe on YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.